fifth Sunday of Easter. Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life." I said last week that sometimes the journey shapes the destination. Jesus, it seems, is more interested with the journey. And Easter is full of journeys. Mary going to the tomb, the men running to the place where the body had been laid, friends meeting a stranger on the road, and fishermen going back to the lake. And some of those are physical journeys, and some are journeys of life-changing discovery. Easter leads us towards those who met behind locked doors suddenly find themselves out on the street, speaking words they never imagined. Easter itself is a journey. It is not over. We are an Easter people. We move through these days towards the coming of the Spirit of God. Now, you might think that a group of people who are trying to change the world would make the most of their key people. But the Gospels repeatedly tell us that the disciples got it wrong. Peter denied Jesus. Thomas refused to believe. God chooses to act through some very imperfect people. And this also is a journey. God is more interested in travelling with us than in telling us where to go. Every morning, when I say morning prayer, I make a habit of reading part of the Rule of St. Benedict. And it's split into 3 sections, and if you go through, you read it 3 times during the course of the year. And this morning's extract struck home. If we wish to dwell in God's tent, we will never arrive unless we run there by doing good deeds. But let us ask with the prophet, "Who will dwell in your tent, O God? Who will find rest upon your holy mountain?" Psalm 15, verse 1. And Benedict reminds us that justice, honesty and compassion are the hallmarks of those who walk with God. But he also reminds us that we cannot walk with God unless God first walks with us. We cannot do good without God's grace. If, for example, we sense the needs of the poor, that is because God has first opened our own eyes. If we are aware of those who are oppressed, it is because God has allowed us to suffer in some smaller way. If we campaign for cleaner air and oceans, then maybe that's because God has first enabled us to share in his work of creation. And this year, this very strange year, as Christian Aid Week approaches, maybe this year we shall have a greater understanding of what life is for those who have little or no control over their destinies. In Benedict's time, holy people often thought that to journey with God was a personal and private matter. The most frequent expression of religious life in those days was personal and individual. The desert monastics lived alone, eating little, praying much. This was a very privatized religion. Benedict introduces us to a different journey. For him, those who dwell in God's tent are those who travel with God amidst the complexities and messiness of community living. Within a Benedictine community, everybody bore a responsibility for everybody else. And practical things mattered. The rule made a point of caring for things which might seem a bit strange in what is, after all, a spiritual writing. But it has to do with living alongside others. For example, if you took a tool to work in the garden and broke it, and put it away broken without saying anything, then the next person who needed it would suffer. For Benedict, everything we do has a consequence for somebody else. And so for Benedict, to walk well with God means first walking well with others. And we cannot walk well with others unless we first walk with God. Hence, Jesus says to us, I am the way and the truth and life. He is the way towards God, and if we know him, then we know the Father. On a walk recently, we passed the church porch at St. Mary's. And as we walked past, I noticed somebody sat there in the gloom, writing in the book of prayers, which is kept there. And over the weekend, 3 pages filled with requests for prayer for people themselves, more often for members of their family or friends. Our churches are closed, but people still need that connection with prayer. And later that day, candles appeared in our Easter garden. So we moved the prayer tree, which is usually kept inside St. Mary's, and of course at this time was locked away and no one could reach it. And we put that prayer tree in the church porch. And never a day has gone by this week without somebody adding a leaf of prayer to that tree. This wasn't our idea. This wasn't a church initiative. It happened because somebody first came to ask for prayers. And the first step doesn't have to be our own. The first step is usually taken by God. And if it's true that we can only know the way when God first allows us to glimpse something of the truth, maybe the truth of how life is for others, then maybe in this strange and difficult year we are learning something about how things are for other people. And God is opening doors to us to compassion and generosity and understanding. The first step is always God's. The decision we have to take is whether or not to follow.